Imagine you're trying to sell your home, but it sits on the market for months on end with no sale. You're getting frustrated and you feel like you're never going to sell it. Well, that headache can definitely be avoided if you do the right preparations before you put your home on the market. Let's talk about it. Hi, my name is Hannah Garcia. I'm a realtor in the states of Wisconsin and Illinois, and this is my channel, Heartland Homes with Hannah. If you're thinking of selling your home, check the link in the description to set up a free consultation with me. The house we're walking through today has already been sold, so at this time it is currently unavailable. But I'd be happy to take you on a tour of a different property if you're looking to buy something. Before we get into the physical side of selling your home, like cleaning, painting, doing repairs, and all of that, I want to talk to you about something that catches a lot of sellers off guard. Selling a home can be an emotional roller coaster. You've lived there, made memories there. It's where you formed your routines, where you may have had big life moments. So naturally, you see the home differently than any buyer is going to see it. And that difference in perception can sometimes be kind of jarring. A buyer walks through your house for maybe 10 minutes. They're not thinking about the memories attached to it. They're thinking about whether or not they can see themselves making memories there. They're deciding if the layout works for them, whether the kitchen feels updated enough, and whether they're going to have to spend money after closing. All of that is normal, and none of it is personal. But I think a lot of sellers do better when they understand all of that going into this process, because it makes feedback easier to hear and negotiations easier to handle. Otherwise, every less than positive comment from a potential buyer can start to feel like a personal attack when it isn't. The overall goal is to create a space where somebody else can picture themselves living there next. And sometimes that means stepping back a little emotionally, so you can prepare the home from the perspective of the market instead of preparing it from having your own attachment to it. Never underestimate how quickly buyers form an impression of a home. Within the first few minutes, buyers are already picking up on whether the house feels well cared for or whether it feels like there might be some problems hiding beneath the surface. They're noticing lighting, smells, noise, little maintenance issues, maybe a soft spot in the floor or a crack in the drywall. And the problem is, buyers usually don't look at those things visually. They start connecting the dots. A sticky door turns into, well, what else hasn't been maintained? A damp basement smell turns into, am I going to be dealing with water issues and mold? Which, trust me, no one wants to deal with. Even small things can shift the way somebody feels while walking through a property. So before you focus on cosmetic upgrades, it's worth taking a really honest look at the overall condition and maintenance of the home. One of the best things you can do before you list your home is get a pre-listing inspection. For some reason, a pre-listing inspection is often skipped, and it really shouldn't be. And I know what some of you are thinking. Why would I pay for an inspection? That's the buyer's job. And technically, yes, the buyer will typically hire their own inspector. And if you have me representing you as a buyer too, I'll never advise you to skip the buyer's inspection either. But anyways, there's a real advantage to knowing what's going on in your home before negotiations even start. You don't want to be blindsided by whatever the buyer's inspector might find. And trust me, the buyer's inspector will find something. There's always something. So if you get a pre-listing inspection, you're not getting that news in the middle of the deal. And when you're in the middle of the deal, there's timeline pressure, emotional pressure, and suddenly you're being asked to make decisions about repairs or giving credits to the seller for them to make the repairs, and you don't really have a lot of time to think very clearly. But if you already know what's there, and you've had weeks to get estimates, decide what you're fixing, decide what you're disclosing, and what you want to price the home, taking all of this into consideration, that's a very different conversation than scrambling to respond to the buyer under pressure. So we get the pre-listing inspection, we decide what can be fixed easily and fix it, and then we disclose everything else that we can't fix easily. And then we also price the home accordingly. When a seller can hand over a pre-listing inspection report, it's a really good signal. It says, I know my home, I've been thorough, I have nothing to hide. And that kind of transparency, even when the report shows minor issues, tends to build trust with the buyer rather than erode it. And trust is what gets us to the closing table a lot faster. Deferred maintenance is worth taking seriously here too. Small things like a dripping faucet, a sticky window, a door that doesn't quite latch, they might feel minor in isolation, but buyers don't take things into consideration in isolation. Buyers see patterns of small things that haven't been addressed. It creates a broader impression that isn't necessarily a good one. It starts to feel like a home that hasn't been taken care of, and that feeling is contagious. It spreads to parts of the home that are actually in great shape and have nothing wrong with them. So fix the small things. Don't just improve the visual, but prevent that narrative from the starting point. Don't even give the buyer a chance to form that opinion in the first place. Okay, something else we need to talk about for a second is the smell of a home. We almost never notice the smell in our own homes, but that's something buyers tend to clock immediately. You get used to the way your house smells. Everybody does. But if there's a problem, it's usually one of the very first things buyers notice. Pet odors are the most common smells people notice, especially dogs. And I say this as someone who loves dogs and has a big dog of my own, but the smell of a dog and the carpet and the walls embedded in the upholstery, It's one of the most consistent objections I tend to hear from buyers. Not because they hate animals, but because it raises a question about whether a smell can be fully eliminated. Smoke smells are up there too for one of the most common and most difficult to deal with. But there's also cooking smells, mildew, basements that are a little too damp. All of that create an immediate sensory reaction that affects how a buyer feels about a space before they even looked at anything else. This isn't something just opening the windows the day before showing can fix. You usually need to address it at the source. So I recommend deep cleaning or replacing carpets that absorb pet odor, have the HVAC system cleaned, and install a fresh filter. And if there's any moisture issues in the basement, around a window, or really anywhere, address it. Not just with air fresheners, but address it at the root. And also, don't overdo it with candles or heavy air fresheners either. Overdoing it can signal that you're trying to cover something up, even if you're not. The goal here is simply for the home to smell clean. Something else that often gets overlooked is the lighting. Natural light is one of the most emotionally compelling things a home can offer, and that's not something people selling their home usually consider or think about. But before listing, clean your windows, inside and out. It sounds minor, but dirty windows noticeably reduce the amount of light coming through, and they give everything a slightly dull, flat look, and that's just not something you want when you're having buyers come through. Also, you should replace any burnt out bulbs and make sure your light fixtures are working correctly. There's nothing more frustrating than touring a home and half of the light switches don't work. And yeah, it's just not a good sign. In rooms that run darker, think about using light bulbs with a warmer temperature. That creates a more inviting atmosphere than a harsh cold white light. All right, now let's talk about some of the more obvious stuff. I'm not going to tell you to do generic things like declutter and clean your house before showings. Okay, I'm absolutely going to tell you to do those things, but it's not all I'm going to tell you. Decluttering is real and it does matter. And let me explain why it matters beyond just it looks cleaner. There's a spatial psychology behind decluttering. When rooms are full, surfaces are covered, closets are packed, furniture is pushed into every corner, it makes spaces feel smaller. And no one wants spaces that feel small. It makes buyers feel a little crowded and they have trouble imagining their own life in the room because your life is visually dominating every corner of it. Clearing things doesn't mean making the house feel cold or empty. It means giving each room to breathe. You want a buyer to walk in and instinctively think, yeah, I could live here. That thought is much harder to have when they're navigating around a decade of accumulated life. Go through closets too. Packed closets tell buyers there's not enough storage space. Half full closets that are organized and calm tell the buyers there's plenty of room. It's the same closet, but the perception is completely different. And deep cleaning is non-negotiable. I want to be specific here. Clean your baseboards, the inside of cabinets, the grout between the tiles, the hood above the stove, the seal around the bathtub, all the places people don't usually clean unless there's company coming. Because think about it, every buyer at every showing is some of the most important company you may have ever had in a home. A buyer who opens a cabinet and that cabinet smells and looks clean, it's a good look. All right, now let's get into some small cosmetic touch-ups that can make a pretty big difference. Fresh paint goes a long way. And no, I'm not suggesting you repaint your entire house, though if the walls are covered in bold, dark, or very specific colors, repainting your whole house is worth some serious consideration. Neutral doesn't mean boring. Warm whites, soft beiges, light sage tones, these give buyers a blank canvas without feeling sterile. If you do decide to repaint, make sure the color you choose is light enough that it's easy to cover for the next color a buyer might want to paint in. And pay attention to trim. Scuffed baseboards and door frames are easy to overlook when you live in a space, but they stand out in photos and in person. A little touch-up of paint on your trim takes an afternoon and it makes it noticeably more polished. Hardware is the same story too. Cabinet pulls, door handles, faucets, if they're dated or worn, swapping them out is usually a pretty cheap upgrade that makes a kitchen or bathroom feel like it's been updated even when nothing structural has changed. Okay, let's talk about staging. Staging is a word that makes some sellers roll their eyes, and I understand the instincts. It can sound like an unnecessary expense or an aesthetic indulgence. But what staging really is about, at its core, is how furniture flows and tells a spatial story. Buyers don't just look at the rooms, they walk through them. And the path they take, the way the furniture guides or blocks their movement, the way a seating area creates a sense of gathering, or it doesn't, all of that shapes how the buyer experiences the space emotionally. A living room where the furniture is pushed to the walls feels completely disconnected. If you pull it in slightly and angle everything towards each other, suddenly it feels like a space where people actually live and talk to each other. Staging can, and in my opinion should, usually be done with your own furniture. You don't need to spend extra money here. You can arrange what you already have in a visually appealing way. That's something I love to do, which a lot of realtors tend to outsource this and usually charge an extra fee for outsourcing the staging. So you don't have to hire a whole extra professional for every room, or really at all, but we should be intentional about each space. What story is the room telling? What furniture should be included in each room? Does it feel like somewhere someone would want to be? We'll also definitely want to remove excess furniture if the room feels crowded. Sometimes less is more, especially for making spaces feel larger. Okay, so enough about the interior of your home. Let's talk about the exterior. Curb appeal, if you will. Because buyers absolutely start judging a house before they ever walk through the front door. As they should. The outside of the home sets the tone for everything that comes after it. Some suggestions to improve the curb appeal are: trim the bushes, edge the lawn, fill in thin or bare spots in the grass if you have time, pressure wash the driveway and the front lawn if they've accumulated years of Wisconsin or Illinois winters, repaint or restain the front door. That's often the first thing that photographs well, and it feels fresh and welcoming in person. Also, make sure your address numbers are visible and clean. Put out a simple, quality doormat. All of these are small things individually, but together they create a feeling of, this home is ready and someone clearly cared about it. That impression carries buyers through the threshold with a completely different mindset than pulling up to a home with an overgrown front lawn and peeling paint on the siding. But now, photography. This is where I want sellers to sit up, because the photos of your home are not a formality. They're your marketing. They're the first thing that 95% of buyers will see before they ever decide to schedule a showing. People are scrolling fast. Your photos have a fraction of a second to stop that scroll. This is not the moment to cut corners. A good real estate photographer knows how to capture a room in a way that shows off the best qualities of the space. The right angle, the right lighting, the right moment of the day. They use equipment that your phone camera simply cannot replicate for interior architecture. Wide lenses that open up the room without distorting it, tripods, controlled lighting setups. Before the photographer arrives, the home should be at its absolute peak. Every light on, every blind or curtain open to let the natural light in, every surface clear and clean, beds made, toilet lids down, dishes put away, cars out of the driveway. All the small stuff that seems a little silly matters the most during picture day, because cameras catch everything. If there's outdoor spaces, get those shots done on a day when the lighting is good and the yard looks best. If the home has unique features like a fireplace, beautiful built-in, or a view, make sure the photographer knows to prioritize those things. Now let's talk about video. Video walkthroughs and 3D virtual tours have become increasingly common, and in a market like ours, where buyers sometimes come from out of state or out of the area, video tours are so important. They let buyers spend real time in the space before committing to a showing. Video walkthrough tours are my specialty, both on long-form platforms like here on YouTube, as well as short-form platforms. Homes that utilize video marketing usually sell a lot faster, and in my opinion, creating walkthrough tours are a must-have in today's market. This is one of the many reasons you should hire me as your realtor. Too many realtors are relying on outdated marketing methods, and that can cost you both time, energy, and money. Okay, one more thing. Let's talk about the showings themselves. Showings require a little logistics and emotional preparation. When your home is listed, buyers will often want to see it on short notice, sometimes same day. So being flexible with showing windows significantly increases the number of people who actually see your home. If you have pets, you need to have a plan. Either they go somewhere with you during the showings, or they're contained in a way that doesn't create stress for them or the buyers that are visiting. The home should be consistently show ready during your listing period, which I know that's a lot to ask, especially if you're living in it, and especially if you have kids or pets or a demanding schedule. But a home that can be shown quickly and confidently without the seller scrambling to clean up, that's a home that gets seen by more buyers. Which again, having video tours available for people to watch can help weed out non-serious buyers and lower the amount of times that you need to do all of these things. Also, please leave during showings. It's so important that buyers have the privacy they need to evaluate whether or not your home is right for them. Buyers move differently through a home when the sellers aren't there. They open things up, they pause in rooms, they talk to each other honestly. When sellers are present, buyers rush through it. They don't want to be rude, so they don't linger. They don't let themselves actually experience the space, which is not what you want if selling in a timely manner is important to you. All of this preparation is important because buyers make decisions based on how confident they feel when walking through a home. When a house feels clean, well-maintained, bright, and move-in ready, buyers tend to feel more comfortable making stronger offers. They're usually less nervous about inspections, less worried about hidden costs, less likely to come in aggressively under asking. And obviously you can't control the entire market. You can't control interest rates or what another seller down the street is deciding to list their home for, but you can control how prepared your home is before it hits the market. I've seen sellers put real effort into preparation and end up making significantly more because the home showed well from day one. I've also seen sellers rush to market without doing much prep at all, and the home ends up sitting longer than expected. So in short, first impressions matter a lot in real estate, and being well prepared helps your house put its best foot forward. Foot? Houses don't have feet? I don't know what the house equivalent of that saying would be, but we're going to stick with it. Preparation helps your house put the best foot forward. If you're somewhere in the middle of this process, maybe you're thinking about selling in the next 6 months, or more like you're thinking about selling next week. Either way, I'd love to sit down and talk with you. Whether it's virtually or in person, the first conversation is always free. And we'll just talk through where you're at and what the process will look like for your specific home and situation. The link to schedule that first conversation is in the description down below. If you have any quick questions, drop them in the comments and I'll be sure to answer them for you. And if this video was helpful for you, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn your notifications on so you never miss a video from me. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.